areas where ZANU-PF, has dominance in the rural areas, in some rural areas. A lot of work needs to be done in order to close the gap. And of course, if you were ZANU-PF, you would be doing the same thing, trying to reduce the gap in the urban areas and maximize your advantage in those rural areas where you are strong. And this brings me, Lynette, to one issue that I observed in my last PSR. One of the things that disappoint me is people don't read. People don't read, they look at things. I see a lot of things which are being spoken about on social media these days. And a lot of people, I see them saying, oh, it's as if it's new. It's not new. These things have been there. These things have been spoken about. These things have been written about. But we have a tendency that we don't read and understand what's going on. I think also for all the greatness of social media, it has created a certain amount of laziness among people, that they don't read long documents anymore. They're just happy to come and read a thread, one or two posts, and they form their opinion on the basis of that. And sometimes they act surprised that, oh, we didn't know this. I mean, how did you not know the things that have been written about for for all these years? I challenge people to read more. I wrote last week about a constituency called Mutare North. Mutare North had 14,000 people who supposedly voted for parliamentary candidates. But it had 32,000 people who supposedly voted in the presidential race. Now, immediately, you don't have to, be a brilliant mind to see that there is something, a red flag there. Did 18,000 people come into those polling stations in that constituency and decide that they were not going to vote for parliamentary candidates, but they would just vote in the presidential election? Somehow, I find that difficult to believe. So that should be a red flag immediately, when you see those figures. And it's there on the ZEC website. These are their figures. I'm not inventing them. And I then had another Zimbabwean who is a better mathematician than I am, statistician, who said, Magaisa, I have actually done this. And I observed 5 more constituencies in Manicaland where the tally of presidential and parliamentary figures is fundamentally different, so as to raise eyebrows. Now, my view, Lynette, is if you are going to run an election as an opposition political party that knows that there are shenanigans that go on, you need a unit of smart young men and women whose job on election evening or election day is to simply pore over these figures as they come, or even within the few days after the election results are announced, because you'll be able to identify the red flags and deal with them in a more systematic way. And even before you go to 2023, that's what you do with the data that you have now. But we don't invest in technical stuff. We are happy when we do what I would call the theater of politics. The theater of politics is rallies, where people come and they enjoy, they listen to their leaders, they show their appreciation, and then they go, and then the next thing, it goes on. That political theater is great. It boosts the egos, it raises the adrenaline, it boosts morale. It's great, but we have to learn very quickly as a people that is only a quarter of the job. 75% of it, the majority of it, is stuff that is done. I've talked about the backroom work. For all its failings, one of the things that ZANU-PF invested is these things that I'm talking about. These are the people who pour over. They might denigrate it here and there publicly, but they will read my work, my BSR, and they will come back and say, can we have a copy, or this and that? And I get this from ZANU-PF people, not from the opposition. And you sometimes when you talk to opposition guys and you say, like I said in the BSR, there's this thing that we need to work on. You'll be surprised. Some of them will say, "Oh, we haven't read it yet," yeah, which is quite frustrating, you know. So for me, it's a lot of technical work that needs to be done in order to prepare for 2023, learning from what has happened in the past. If that is done, I think that the chances will be much greater than in the past. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Magaisa. I hear you loud and clear. Technical work, technical work, technical work. There's need to invest in the technical area. So this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to give you an opportunity to speak. If I've given you the mic, please be 60 seconds, a minute or two, and no insults. Let's be respectful. As soon as you insult anyone, I'm dropping you off and not giving you the mic again. So let's be respectful in our engagement. So I see people are raising their hands, but I've been noting down requests as they were coming through. So I'm going to give you the mic in the order you requested for the mic. So I will start with Honorable Ryan, then Danny Boy, then Tawana, then Wellington, and then Dr. Magaisa will respond, and then I'll come back for a second round. So Honorable Ryan, Danny Boy, Tawana, and Wellington, in that order.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. Good evening, Doc. I just have three questions. The first one is, you've indicated that the race for the presidential or the 2023 elections is now between Ccc and ZANU-PF. Do you think that is a right assertion to make, bearing in mind that the political environment can shift at any particular time? The second one is, I know you're one of the best minds in terms of political ideology in Zimbabwe, constitutionalism. Do you think Nelson Chamisa, the current Ccc president, was to blame for the fractions that transpired within MDC that led to the denigration of Morgan Tsvangirai's legacy? And lastly, do you think there is a way that the opposition parties can come together for the next election without insulting or denigrating one another? Bearing in mind that even united, they have a slight chance of even winning against ZANU-PF. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. Danny Boy?
Oh yeah, thank you, Lynette. All right, so I was busy writing my stuff because I always forget. But anyway, first of all, I wasn't really convinced by the Coupe explanation. I really believe that the opposition is making a big mistake there. Coupe has in previous times mentioned that she's in politics for money, and she's made very, very suspicious comments about her political ambitions, regardless of her outstanding history as a politician. I really believe that in the future, the party should focus on raising new names, new young, revolutionaries, so to speak, rather than recycling the same old mess, which totally removes the idea of CCC being a new party and doing things in a new way. That's just one comment I want to make. And then also, I just want to mention of how ZANU-PF came. I'm going to wind a little bit, sorry, Lynette, but then how ZANU-PF came through, and there was an opportunity for them to do something new, do something different, and they totally botched it. And it's the same thing for CCC, which has had opportunity to do something new, do something different from how the MDC was doing. But then we've seen the same things. We've seen the same way how they address issues. You've mentioned some of them yourself, Doc. So I just want to find out from you, what do you think the CCC really, really needs to do some things and to achieve its goals what different things can it do to achieve its goals, rather? Thank you so much. I rest my case here for now.
Thank you very much, Danny Boy, for that question. Let's have Tawana come through.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'm going to reframe my inquiry by extensively quoting Wamagaisa, so that in order to be context specific to my question, and also in order to probably force Wamagaisa to reframe his response within that context. Probably Wamagaisa, at the end of the day, you're gonna say that Fano is a stalker, he's been stalking me, so to speak. Oh, Wamagaisa, you are on record to say that a party does not have the prerogative or the discretion to choose its supporters, or who is going to support it, or who is not going to support it, who's not going to support it. But however, a party has got a discretion and a prerogative to choose its leaders, to choose its leadership. Furthermore, Wamagaisa, you said, if you want to test the sincerity, the integrity, or the genuineness of a person, you need to observe and assess and analyze them when they have power, authority, and influence. Therefore, it is within this context that I want to, ask you, how would or should the CCC leadership handle or manage the issue of these two individuals who have been controversial, divisive, and quite treacherous? I'm talking about Fungai Chipusi and Makupe, Dr. Makupe, because over the last 2 weeks or so, they have been arrogantly, get crushed into the CCC, and proudly, without any shame, declare themselves that they are the supporters of CCC. This is in light of what you further said, Wamagaisa, that CCC, need to behave like a newly born wildebeest calf. That is, it needs to sense and smell and see danger. This is quite instructive because we both Chiposi and Makupe, through their commissions and omissions, they've aided and abated ZANU-PF authoritarian consolidation. They've played a destructive role in destroying parliamentary democracy and ultimately destroying the hitherto MDC alliance as led by Morgan Changarai. And also, Magaisa, you like the wisdom of the ordinary person. You have been on the record to say most of the time, it has been the ordinary supporters of CCC who have been smart enough, streetwise enough to see danger and treacherous and conflicted, opportunists within the opposition movement. And they went on through their judgment. They've been vindicated when they raised the issue, particularly to do with the likes of Makupe, the likes of Dagi, the likes of Komichi. And furthermore, coming to the wisdom of the ordinary person, immediately after Makupe has posted his picture when he attended the Blawayo, I think, rally of Nelson Machamis over the weekend, there was this tweeter in Ordinary Folk who gave a very good analogy. He said, there is no way Lionel Messi or Ronaldo would join Real Madrid or Man United to be on the substitute bench. So therefore, my guys, can you please give me a response within that specific framework? Thank you.
That was a long question, the context as well, but I hope Dr. Magaisa got that. Thank you very much for that. Let's have Wellington, the last speaker for this round, come through. Wellington?
Thank you very much. Good evening, Doc. Great respect to you. I love to read analysis and clear thinking to follow your thought. I personally recognize several coups in the Zimbabwean political space. I recognize it from Gibson Swanda, moving from Gibson Swanda, I recognize it with Makupe. And I'm asking from a Tebeleland perspective, do we have a place on the high table in Harare coming from Matebeleland, or are we to perceive ourselves as relegated to the sidelines at all cost? And I ask this because I recognize the demise of the MDC, particularly in its inability to resolve the Matebeleland question. Various maneuvers they've made, and I don't see any conclusive maneuvers to bring Matebeleland in. Perhaps even I can see that ZANU-PF has done it better, but obviously how be it through that principled decision that Nkomo had to make. So, or should Ndebele politician expecting to go to Congress in Harare or towards the high table really be taking with them some security, or they will be subjected to that undemocratic scenario, which was not fully dealt with in the public media? How it is that Makupe could be subjected to that humiliating clap that went viral. So the concern is, do we as Matebeleland have a place on that table? Perhaps even more importantly, in the new baby. And how do you see that resolution coming to bear so that we don't have these coups, but we have democratic principles play on politics with majority vote and constitutional transfers of power? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Wellington. Dr. Magaisa, you can go ahead and respond to those questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lynette, and to those who have asked questions. Oh, there are many questions, fundamental questions. I don't know where to start, but let me begin with the first, by Ryan. I think I say there's the two key players are Ccc and ZANU-PF, and you ask whether I'm right in that assertion. Well, I mean, look, Ryan, if you ask me that question, I will insist that I believe I'm right, of course. What I would have preferred is for you to articulate why you think that is not right. I agree with you that, politics can change. But to be honest, from where I'm standing, I don't see much changing between now and 2023. I would say that perhaps, who knows, 2028, there's going to be huge changes after. The 2023 election is key, both for Nelson Chamisa and for Emmerson Mnangagwa. I'm sure there are many other people who are also looking at that election, and, there's always a future to look to. So, yeah, I mean, my frank assessment is those are the two. I don't see the MDC led by Senator Monzora making any serious impact in the presidential election in particular. But who knows, what impact it might have in the parliamentary election in some spaces. I also don't think that they won't have much opportunity given what happened on 26 March. But we saw, sometimes people choose candidates as opposed to political parties at parliamentary level. So we saw people who were voting for example, Nelson Chamisa, but they would have been voting for another candidate, maybe NPF or an independent candidate in the parliamentary election. So, I mean, the permutations are different for presidential races and the parliamentary races. But yeah, those are the two that I see. You ask whether Nelson Chamisa is to blame. I think, look, this is a bit of a rabbit hole because, I think that there are many players who participated in what happened in the period between, I would even say, 2014 and 2018. I've talked about the handling of the succession issue. I think that things could have been done differently. Maybe I'm not being too direct there, but it tells you that there are many actors who were involved who, take a share of the blame. But you know what? Now, given where we are, it's water under the bridge. The Ccc is there. The only question for them is whether they are learning from what happened and how to avoid it in future, in case it plunges the party into the same problems. Your third question was whether the opposition parties can come together. I'll try to answer this in conjunction with the other questions which have come from Taona as well as from Danny. So Danny talked about Dr. Kupe, not convinced by the explanation, and that we need to find new names. I'm with you. I'm with you in so far as the need to find new names is concerned. We've had some politicians for 20 years. I hear many people raising questions about, MPs who have been in parliament since 2000, no change that is taking place. They are writing on the name of the party. We need changes. We need new names. And definitely. I mean, you saw what happened in Harare West, for example, or even Mavugu Tafara in 2018, where, new young people came in. And I remember I was on the wrong side of that debate because I thought, oh, who is this Joanna Mamombe who is challenging Jesse Majomel? I thought Jesse had done a great job as an MP in the past. And, people quickly came to me and said, look, this is what's happening. This is, new names, younger people. And yeah, I mean, what a credit, she has been to the democratic movement. So I am open-minded on these things. I think it's important to have new people. I've said that, whether it's Manika land, Matebele land, Mashona land, or wherever, there are new young politicians who are there who need to get in to find space. The idea of, godmothers and godfathers, we have to get rid of that and make sure that we open up new spaces for young people. But just to say, my argument was not to say that you should accommodate Madame Coupe, Chiposi, and others. No, it is to say whatever decisions you make those decisions by looking at the forest rather than by looking at the individual trees. It's a metaphor to say, let's look at the bigger picture. But you are entirely within your right to say, look, this forest is beautiful, but this is a toxic plant. We don't want this because it is toxifying the environment. It's a Lantana Camara, which is affecting our cattle. We don't want it. If there is toxicity, then of course people are free to do so. My brother Taona, I know you are an avid reader. Thank you so much. You've quoted me extensively on these issues, and you have quoted me very accurately too, which I must acknowledge. Sometimes people misquote. And yes, I did say that a party doesn't have the liberty to choose its supporters, but it can choose its leaders. And I was giving an example. How the MDC alliance was criticized by some people in 2018 that Mugabe had chosen to support Nelson Chamisa and the MDC alliance. What would Chamisa say? Mr. Mugabe, I don't want your vote. I mean, how would you look in the eyes of the public? Who knows? Maybe a lot of people who sympathized with President Mugabe at the time, were swayed by his allegiance to Chamisa for those elections to vote for him, and they would have supported him. You talk about observe how people come to power, how they behave when they have power, and I still stand by that. And you're right. If you want to understand the character of a person, look at how they behave when they have power. If they are going to abuse power, when they come to you, when they no longer have power, they look like they want to be, nice people, great people, talking all this, pontificating about all the beautiful things. But just take them back into a position of power, and they will behave exactly in the same way. And we have seen that in the course of our history. So my view about people like Dr. Kupe and Fungai Chiposi, I don't want to be detained by them as individuals. I've said there are more people in Chakari, who are supporting ZANU-PF, who the CCC should be quoting. There are more people in Gokwe Kabuyuni. Some people are hearing it for the first time, but it's the constituents. Gokwe Gumuyu, Gokwe Sengwa. These are areas that people had probably never heard of, but they're huge constituencies with huge numbers of people. We should be focusing more on those individuals and people as opposed to these, lone individuals. For me, people are spending too much time. And I suppose it's because of social media, because you don't get people from Gogo Kabuyuni on social media, and so we don't talk about them, but we tend to spend more time talking about an individual who is on Twitter and is tweeted, and we get drawn into this debate. And people spend the whole day, the whole week focusing on it. For me, it's not the right approach. Focus on where the people are. Those are the people that you need to convert to be part of you, as opposed to, one individual. For me, that's and yes, of course, the wisdom of the people eventually settles issues. I don't know, if Messi or Ronaldo were to come to your team, they probably don't want to sit on the bench. But my answer to that is, you would have to be Messi or Ronaldo to have that privilege. And I don't see any Messis or Ronaldos in our political space who are joining different political parties or trying to join different political parties. My brother Wellington raised a question which, in my opinion, is a question that would probably require a space on its own, because it is very fundamental. It is very thought-provoking, and you are right when you, in your critical lens, you are going back to the formation of the MDC and saying, perhaps the leader then should have been Gibson Sibanda, but he wasn't. He was passed over for Morgan Tsvangirai. And then you have the situation of Dr. Kupe. And of course, this raises very serious and legitimate questions from people from that region, from that ethnic group, to say, are we forever destined to be number two, to be the bridesmaids rather than the brides or the grooms? So it's an important question. For me, my brother Wellington, rather than this be a CCC question or even just a ZANU-PF question, I think it's a national question. The same way that we had to handle things like the land issue as the land question, I don't think that we have done enough to interrogate this issue, the national question concerning nationhood. I have the advantage of some good friends, in academic circles, who have done some incredible work. And as I said earlier, admonishing people don't like to read. People, please read. There's a book, Becoming Zimbabwean. There's a book, again, my brother Sabelo Gasheni and Lovu, Professor Sabelo, good friend of mine. He has written, very intriguing books which are asking, these questions. But unfortunately, this work tends to remain in our academic shelves and does not filter through to the people who need to read and understand these things. Part of my own work with the DSRA has been to try and bridge this gap, to draw some of this wonderful work that is done by my colleagues in the academy and try and bring it down to the level where people can read and understand it. But I would like us to do more of that, because it will help us to handle these important questions. And we must do so from a very early age. Not because we are now, in a political party, therefore we are now asking who should be the leader. These are questions that should be asked from primary school. The issues of, politics of identity, the issues concerning resource exploitation and allocation, questions concerning the distribution of resources across people, across regions, the question of privilege. You see, when you are, and I know this, many people who dismiss, questions such as coming from Wellington, do so in the same way that you might find a white person who is very surprised when a black person raises questions of privilege. They say, but what privilege are you talking about? It's because when you're in a position of privilege, it's very hard to understand the position of those who are claiming or who are arguing that they're underprivileged. And I think that, these questions need to be engaged with from a very early age in very, various platforms. We should be discussing these things in spaces. And I don't want it to be part of this broad discussion that we are having. It has to be, I think, a question that requires a concerted and dedicated effort to dealing with it. Because just to acknowledge my brother Wellington, it's a legitimate inquiry, it's a legitimate question, and it's a question that I cannot answer and respond to cogently on this platform. But I would love it to be interrogated in a very frank and honest way.
Thank you very much, Dr. Magaisa, for responding to those questions. And also, I will ensure that we actually have a space to discuss this particular issue. Thank you very much, Wellington, for raising such an important issue. So let's move on to our next speakers. We'll have Chamunorwa first, then the rise of Kataya second, Dr. Jeda coming in third, Seke coming in fourth, D, and then Guru. Can we try to keep our questions and our comments short so that we can give others an opportunity to speak? So at this moment, I'm giving Chamu the virtual mic. Go ahead.
Thanks for hosting this space, and thanks, Dr. Magaisa, for this very engaging conversation. I read your BSRs and love them. My question, Dr. Magaisa, is you mentioned earlier on that, which is actually what we are discussing now, the demise of the MDC and the ascendance of the Ccc. And you said you wish that Ccc shows that they've learned something from that demise. What I'd like to find out is a question that came when Ccc was launched. Questions like, do they have a constitution? Who is Ccc now? Where do they stand as a legal entity? Are they not already exposing themselves to some of the weaknesses that legal weaknesses that they suffered from as MDC? So that's my question. And then another one. We see you wearing yellow. You've got yellow T-shirt and a yellow background. Are you a member of Ccc? And what capacity are you, if you're a member or if you're just someone that aligns with their interests? What kind of contributions are you giving to them? Because you've already in this conversation indicated that you may not be quite satisfied with some of the ways that they're handling things. Those are my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Chamnora. Let's have the rise come through. The rise of Kataya, are you there?
Yes, I am there. Thank you so much. I would like to ask a question which is direct to the existence of the MDC as of now, on the back of parliamentarians who either did not resign or are still giving financial benefit to Monzora because of their lack of resignation or their lack of being open with regards to that. How much of a political suicide to the Ccc would it be if those people were enforced to resign as of now? Because as long as they are still in parliament, Douglas Monzora and company will be benefiting financially through the political act. That's my direct question to Magaisa. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Let's move on to our next speaker, Dr. Jeda. Is Doctor still here? I don't see him. Let's move on to Seke. Seke seems to have dropped as well. Let's have a D. D, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Lynette, and good to meet you virtually, Koma Alex. A couple questions. Number one is to do with the Citizens Charter, which Nelson Chamisa said is being prepared. I think that most of the questions that we're having, be it people that previously have gone out and have recalled our elected representatives, essentially nullifying our vote, now are returning. It can be answered in that Citizens Charter. You know, what are the rules that will entail someone coming back in? And now, great concern is that it seems to be something that is now taking forever. Yes, we are 3 months old, but to the extent that we have got top lawyers in the current interim leadership, and they produce huge voluminous court arguments and documents, to the extent that even you, Mkoma Alex, you are a constitutional lawyer that has actually written a constitution. There is really nothing new under the sun. And if people really wanted to get this going, it would just entail, I believe, a weekend of making a draft. Then that draft is not the final document. And what President Chamisa is doing right now, he would be taking that document draft to the people, introducing it. And you will then have the input even of the likes of Wellington, who talked of the Matabeleland question. They will also make their contributions about what it should really nuance. And we find that now this is taking too long, but we need to have that in place so that we can know how we will elect who will go into position. Related to that, Koma Alex, is the second one. We must separate party admin from the contestants of political office, because a party admin is receiving two contestants who are competing. Now, you can't have them be referee as well as player. So the Citizens Charter should answer such things. Now, you can already clearly, and I can see Sister Fadzai is here, Mount Pleasant, or she's just dropped off. She's involved. She will likely contest for Mount Pleasant. Right there as a contestant, if she's also in party admin, guess what? Who can compete with her? She will be both referee as well as a contestant. But we need that Citizen Charter to be in place and separate party administration. You know, hire out people like, you know, yourself, Nkoma Alex, people like Freeman Chari. Let those be the technocrats that administer the party, and those that seek political office, then you contest fairly on a rules-based order that is open to everyone within our party. And that would also answer, of course, to whether we will have Namai Kupe and Chiposi coming in. And finally, do you not think that it is high time, Alex, that politicians in this country must live with the consequences of their decision? Every time that we give them a pass and they don't live with the consequences of their decision, they continue to abuse us. From 1980 up to now, I won't mention the incidences, we all know them, but it is because we are quickly to forgive, we don't allow them to live with the consequences. So do you not think that we should have that? But maybe again, Citizens Charter, as you can see, all my things, this comes back to this. How soon should we have it? Hopefully you've got an ear with Nelson Chamisa, and you can say, you know what, it's time we have this. 3 months is a long time. We are all lawyers. This thing can be drafted in 2 days, and we have a draft. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Let's have Guru come through. Guru, are you there?
Lynette, maybe I should come in. We already have
okay, go ahead.
quite a few questions here. So let me try and deal with them as we now Chamu and D, I think the last speaker raised similar questions concerning the issue of the new organization. I don't speak for the party, so I don't know what the position is at the moment. But I could not have put things any better than D put them. And in some ways, if people remember when I was writing about the problem of double candidates, which cropped up again, in the by-elections, I did say that there is a potential problem here for the CCC in that, old habits die hard, because these are problems that the MDC used to have in the past, and we saw those problems cropping up in the CCC, at least in about 3 or so constituencies. Now, I was very clear as to where the problem was emanating from, and D has pointed it out very clearly. It is that there was a lack of rules, or rather, a lack of clarity in terms of the rules. Politicians like to talk political speak, so they use rhetoric. If you listen to the politicians, they'll say, our representatives, our candidates will come from the people. Now, my own analytical mind, says to me, look, you haven't started talking, because without clarifying how they will come from the people, it doesn't mean anything at all, you see, and that's a challenge. So that answer, and I did mention it, I said, if you want to resolve the problem of double candidates, you need to have a clear set of rules on how candidates are going to be selected, because otherwise you are going to have the same problem recurring in the main election in 2023. So hopefully the Citizens Charter or the party constitution will set these things out very clearly. And you are right as well, D, in talking about these things. With all the vast legal capital at the disposal of the CCC, this is an issue that really shouldn't be causing any problems at all. These are things that should have been handled and resolved very quickly. And I hope they are here listening. And if they are not here, I hope they will listen to the recording and hear the very eloquent points that you made. I also like the point that you made about conflicts of interest. I've made the argument that a political party of substance should be run almost on similar lines like a quoted company. Yes, the company may be seeking profit, but you are seeking political profit. So you need to have a competent CEO. You need to have a competent board. You need to have a competent staff, which has got the skills that are necessary to run that business. You can't do everything. And so, my recommendation if you go back to my writings a few years ago, I say, this is what is required. You need to run this organization as if, if CCC were a corporation, one of the things that it would have done on 24 January was it would have been listing on the stock exchange. It would have been going on road shows like it did around the country, marketing itself, yeah, and saying that we want you to list, we want you to become our shareholders. And it did that. It would be, right now, it probably would be claiming a status as a blue chip company. In UK terms, you would probably be saying it's on the FTSE 100 or something like that. So an organization like that needs to be run in the manner befitting an organization of that stature and structure. And so, yes, I'm with you entirely on this. A competent administration, separation between the politicians and the administrators, because ultimately politicians, have an interest in the races they are contesting in, and that becomes problematic. So I couldn't have put it any better. Perhaps just add a little gloss to what you have said. The issue about living with consequences of your actions, again, a brilliant point. One of the reasons we call it impunity. The reasons why there's continued political violence in our country is because those who violate others know that they are protected. I once did a BSR. I wish I will share it. And by the way, we are now in the process of compiling some of the best BSRs into volumes that will become available on the market very soon. And I remember one of the BSRs that we would like to use is the one that talked about how the culture of impunity developed in our country. And I hope it can help, especially the younger Zimbabweans, Zama 2000 and others, to understand the genesis of our problems. You know, after every election and every election violence, President Mugabe would always issue an amnesty, you know, for all the violence that would have taken place. And of course, you know, this gave comfort to those violators that if they do the same thing in the next election, they will again be protected. They will be given an amnesty. So, you know, we have to get rid of that. So the point you're raising in terms of our politicians, you know, if they do things that are disagreeable, then they must carry the cost of that disagreeability. And people are well within their rights to do so. Because if you don't, they carry on with the impunity. So this, I suppose, qualifies the point that I've made about understanding how politics works, that there will be separations and reunions. But I think at the end of the day, it is up to the people to make that decision. And I always trust the court of public opinion, especially when it's not rigged. I think the court of public opinion, people have their wisdom. They will be able to choose whether the person should be readmitted or not. Someone raised the question of MPs who are still in parliament. I've discussed this issue in one of my threads. I was non-committal about the issue, but I thought it was an important issue to discuss. It's a complex issue because, you know, some of these MPs who are still in parliament, they have offered in the past to resign, or so they tell me. And they've been told, you know, hold on, for whatever reason. You know, there are also some MPs who are sitting in there without actually making commitments. But there are others who have been very committal. They're very clear about where they stand in terms of their allegiance to the Ccc. Now, I hear you, the point about, you know, the fact that they give political capital. Their presence is sort of credited to to Douglas Monzora and his party. They are able to claim them and say they're MDC Alliance MPs, and of course are able to claim the benefit of the resources that come from the political under the Political Parties Financing Act. But I also wanted to be very clear here that simply resigning from parliament or being recalled does not stop Monzora from still receiving the funds. There has to be a by-election. Now, you would hope that there would be a by-election, which will be able to be contested, and then perhaps Monzora and his party will lose again like they did on March 26th. But given our political system and the dishonesty there's no guarantee that even if they resign, a by-election will be declared. And so they would have resigned, yes, but that would not stop Monzora from still receiving money under the Political Parties Financing Act. So that is determined by the by-elections. But I also wanted to make a clarification here because there's something that really annoys and frustrates me. I don't know where Zimbabweans get these things from. So when people are asked, why can't these MPs resign? I often hear people saying, oh, but will they be able to contest if they resign? There seems to be a view that if an MP resigns, then they are barred from running in the election. I have no idea where they get that information from. You can resign from parliament and you can still contest in the by-election whenever a by-election is called. So that issue does not arise. I don't know whoever started it, but I see so many people raising it and talking about it. Anyway, I think I've answered most of all the questions in this round. Maybe, Lynette, we could take the last round of questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Magaisa, for that. So we're going to have the following speakers. Let me just look for my list, but here we go. We have a candidate, a Democratic candidate here, Michael. He will go first. Thank you very much for joining us. We have Mambo, you'll go second. We have Guru, you'll go third, and then Seke, you'll go fourth. Go ahead, Michael.
Thank you. One of the things that Alex said that I think is true for democracy everywhere is that we are told that these candidates are from the people or that we are selecting our candidates. But I think he's right. There's great insight and wisdom in remembering that there's so many ways that this process can be manipulated or rigged. I'm here as a resource to all of you, but I think since I haven't heard anybody do it, I'm going to go ahead and just do the call to action. Please remember to follow the host and the co-host or anybody else in the room that is of interest to you. And if you have not invited your friends and family to join our conversation, please do so by hitting the little blue button, which is in the lower right-hand corner, and then immediately hitting the button that is in the upper right-hand corner. It's a rectangular button. Back to you, Alex.
Thank you very much for that, Michael. Let's have the other speakers come through. Mambo, please go ahead.
Thank you, Leonard, for giving me the mic. My question is that does the opposition really think that they will be able to obtain power come 2023, provided how Mugabe was removed from power? These are men that risked their lives to remove this person from power. So I don't see that in the next 5 years or 10, the same people that put their lives on the line are going to simply give up that power. That's the first question that I have. The second one is, we see the likes of Opro, they argue that, you know what, this thing is actually possible if the youth overwhelm ZEC or ZEC's rigging mechanisms. He does have a point in saying that. But also, I don't know, do these people feel that simply overwhelming ZEC is going to, convince men who risk their lives, put their lives on the line to remove Mugabe? That's also another thing. Then the final thing is that, isn't it the time the opposition courts the military? Because it's quite evident that the power really lies with the military. I think other options have been exhausted. Is it not the time now that the opposition tries to have some form of understanding with the military that, look, guys, we really understand that you are the guys that have the power. When we are going to the next election, at least do not interfere or do not support ZANU-PF to some extent. So yeah, that's my question.
Thank you for that. Our next speaker is Guru. Please go ahead. Guru, are you there? Seke, please come through.
Thank you for the opportunity. Amakaisa, I just want to ask about this political prostitute that we are having in Zimbabwe. People like your Jonathan Moyo, your Temba Muliswa, your Killer Zibu. How should Triple C handle these people, considering that they've got some influence to some extent, but there are also some spent forces? But could Triple C use them, or should they be left out? Also, the issue of Matabeleland. It's like now, raw Matabeleland and some parts of the urban Matabeleland is now pro-ZANU. How did it come? Because during Changra's days, Matabeleland used to be under MTC. How can Triple C take advantage and turn the table on ZANU-PF on the Matabeleland vote? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Magais, I've just smuggled one more person. We never had a female speaker, and I just thought let's have a female speaker ask a question here. Global Health Dorcas, please go ahead.
Thank you, Leonard. Thank you, Alex. Alex, I have a very simple question. Are we over-reliant on the courts, important as it is, and hugely important as it is? But you give examples of Kenya, Uhuru, and the contestant. These are negotiations that have happened, not necessarily in court, but they've happened through cultural means, through talking, through dialogue, and through realizing that peace is much better than going to war. And we're also talking about a very complex country, Kenya, not least tribally. Look at Ghana, where they were historically, and where they are now. Those battles haven't been fought necessarily through courts. They've been fought through some serious negotiations regionally and within the country. And maybe I'll just use an example closer to home, which is health, my own field. We wouldn't be where we are in pandemics and with Ebola and HIV and the current pandemic if we simply use the law to say everybody has to be vaccinated. There's a lot of scope and a lot of capital in terms of going to grassroots level, negotiating with chiefs, negotiating with women, using all sorts of capital that we can use. What I'm alluding to is, are there softer skills that we should be using as Zimbabweans collectively in terms of negotiating some of our really deep, complex situations, rather than just relying on the courts? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question and all the other questions. Dr. Magaisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your observation, Lynette. You know, our political spaces, tend to be very, very masculine, full of testosterone, and I don't know whether it's the way that we conduct our politics. But if I had control, I would allow. I see there's Sandra and G. Vere who have requested that I think would add a significant balance to the people who are asking questions. So after I answer this, I'm happy for you to allow Sandra and G. Vere to ask their questions. And if you say Magaisa is playing favoritism, I'm happy to take the blame for that. But I realized that I forgot to answer Chamu's question where he says, am I a member of CCC? Where do I stand? And I fear maybe Chamu and others might say, Magaisa is running away from the question. Look, I've never hidden my political totem, so to speak. Everybody knows my history in terms of where I've been and whom I have worked with and supported. I cannot have been working with Morgan Tsvangirai if I wasn't supporting the MDC, or working with the Constitution on the Constitution with the MDC if I wasn't supporting them. So I don't know why some of our people think that it's a sin to be associated with a political party just because you are an academic. I don't know why people like this facade of objectivity, that supposedly comes from not declaring your allegiance. I mean, look, we are all human. We have got our allegiances. If you are in the US or in the UK, you get Democratic commentators and Republican commentators, conservative commentators, and Labour. There's nothing wrong with that, So I don't hide my political totem, so to speak, but I also don't shy away from being critical when I have to. It's important to do that. So I hope that answers the question, Cham. I would encourage other people, please don't shy away. There's nothing wrong with declaring where you stand. It doesn't stop your argument being valid. Does the opposition believe they can take power? Look, this is an issue that I raised after before the 2018 elections, because objectively, I did not believe that people who had carried out a coup a few months earlier would be prepared to give it up very, very quickly after. Oh no. Oh, am I still? Sorry, I thought I'd been taken out of the space. So yeah, I think that it's a problem, and but I think for me, there's an issue of political messaging, which is very critical. I've been saying in recent weeks that people in the opposition, the party, the politicians, and their allies, they have to be very careful about how they message, because I think right now we have a problem in that we have a political party which is going around the country and telling people that they must get IDs, that they must register, which is a beautiful thing to do, which is important because the opposition really needs more people to register to vote. But at the same time, you also have very vocal voices in the opposition spaces, which are saying, look, this election is already rigged. This election is already done. It's conflicting, because if I were a young person, a 17 or 18-year-old, listening to these messages, I probably would find it very difficult to get up and go and get an ID to register, because you get exactly to the point that where you are now, where you say, is it worth it? Is it ever going to happen? I think that there is something fundamentally amiss, and I'm happy to say so now. I've said it in private to many colleagues, and I say, you have to be very careful about the messaging you are putting out there, because if you continue to put in the message that this is done, this is already captured, and it's there's no way, you are simply going to disillusion. It's a disincentive to people, and especially during a campaign like now, when there is actually a mobile voter registration campaign. I think that there has to be, communication has to be strategic on these issues. Quoting the military, I've written about this in my BSR. A few weeks ago, I talked about how the military has effectively become the fourth arm of the state. And I said that this became more solidified after the 2018 coup. And therefore, Zimbabwe doesn't really respond to the traditional way in which the state is organized. You have to understand, the new sort of the geography of power. And the point that you are asking is the point that I was also making, that you need to engage and make it clear, that, the change of government is not a threat. It is an opportunity. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And a lot of that work is done behind the scenes. It is not done in public. It is not done in public statements. It is done behind the scenes. And yeah, hopefully that is being done. I think the other question was on people who change political colors, and I think it's easy to be detained by individuals. I think I've already answered this question, that individuals, for me, who are politicians, who are or consider themselves to be big people or important voices, I think we give them too much attention, or perhaps you guys give us too much attention when the more important people are out there in the villages and the townships. I think people shouldn't be too detained there. But it's the nature of us as people. We like to follow people, to hear what they have to say, and to disagree, to agree with them. But the statement that Taona quoted, my older statement, where I said, if you want to understand the true character of a person, you must always check about how they used power when they were in a position of power. For me, that is instructive about the approach that I have to these people that you are referring to. My sister Doc has raised another important question, which Lynette, you must take note, is probably a Twitter space on its own. But are we over-reliant on the courts? My sister, I'm a lawyer, many years. I read law, I write about law, but surprising to many people, I've become more skeptical, about the capacity of law to deal with uh, some certain important political and social questions. I think there is, there is to some extent an over-reliance on it, a belief that, the law will solve issues. For many years, I've quoted a very beautiful quotation by a former American Justice Leonard Hand, who wrote a beautiful speech which you should search on Google. You just go to the internet and look for a speech called The Spirit of Liberty. And he talks about how we often rely too much on the courts of law and the constitutions to search for liberty, but liberty doesn't, lie there. Liberty lies in the hearts and minds of people. So that's my starting point. I first came across this speech years ago when I was in a graduate school, and it has always informed my approach to the way that sometimes we are too quick to try and say. And I hear many people these days, we must go to court, we must sue Zach, we must do this. And I say, what is the cause of action? It's very easy to make a claim. Lawyers have a difficult job because they have to, if you go to a lawyer and you say to them, this is my problem, it might be a problem, but it has to fit within certain legal, technical parameters, certain rules. Law is a rule-based discipline. If it doesn't, then it's not there. There's nothing much you can do. I'm reading a book at the moment called Law in a Time of Crisis by a former judge of the Supreme Court of the UK, who, interestingly, like myself, is also a skeptic. And one of the points that he makes is, the practice of law is great. The law is not the problem. The law is there. The Electoral Act is there. The Constitution is there. But what is often problematic is the issue of facts and evidence. That's where most of the disputes are. So when you say the law requires ZEC to do A, B, C, D, that is not in dispute at all. The question becomes, have you gathered enough facts and evidence? And when I say enough facts and evidence, I'm not talking about Twitter chatter. No, I'm talking about evidence and facts that can be presented in a court of law. Getting an affidavit from someone who is willing to put their name under oath and say, this is what happened and this is what I saw. Those things, people don't think about them because all they see are videos on social media and they say, oh, there's abundant evidence. But that is not admissible if there's nobody who is willing to testify. So I think that there's so much over-reliance on the courts of law. You had me, my sister Dorcas, when I was questioning the Supreme Court judgment, the High Court judgment, how it intervened in a matter that was a political matter which could be resolved politically. So, yeah, I'm with you there. Then finally, I think the point that you raise is even more fundamental, the softer skills that are lacking in our political space. When people criticize lawyers, I think that they've got a legitimate point, but not for the reasons that they give. For me, it is that there are certain softer skills that lawyers don't have. Lawyers are generally trained to look at issues from an adversarial perspective. In other words, I'm here, you've got your point, I want to hear your point, let's argue over it. Let's see who is going to be the winner. But there are other ways in which you can deal with a problem beyond this adversarial approach. And we don't have enough people with other skills who are willing to take the plunge, so to speak, into the political arena. It is us lawyers, a species that I suppose is more talkative, more extroverted, and willing to take risks, who tend to find themselves in these political spaces. I'm sure you've seen, Sis Dorcas, how I've used a lot of concepts and theories from psychology, for example, like things like habituation, to try and explain why people get used to hardship. The Dunning-Kruger effect, to try and explain how people who don't know that they don't know. And I'm doing this, poaching from other disciplines in order to explain things. But I don't have to be the one doing that, because I'm not even an expert in that. There are people who are much smarter than me, who know these things much better than I do, who can actually be making a more incredible contribution to our political space if they are willing to do that. So when I do it, I'm challenging them to do so, and I think that we could have more in that regard. So I'm definitely with you. But as I said, this is a subject of a Twitter space on its own. But it's so fundamental that one day perhaps we should speak about it. So I'd agree that the two ladies could ask their questions before I close off, because I've been here for 2 hours, and I know that it's fascinating. I'm enjoying it, but I have to attend to other duties very soon. So if they can please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Dr. Magaisa, for that. Gloria, please go ahead. And Sandra, her mic was on and there was feedback, so I removed her from the speakers. I kept muting her, but I ended up removing her. Sandra, if you're here, please request for the mic and then I'll add you back up. In the meantime, Gloria, please ask your question.
All right, thank you so much. Wamagaisa, I got two questions for you. The first one is, what advice do you have for Nelson Chamisa and team to not attract per se, because people are already willing to help, but to court some of the best minds out there in the world? As you know, Zimbabwe, experienced a lot of brain drain, where people go out for tertiary education and then they stay wherever they are. But you also realize that these are some of the smartest minds in Zimbabwe that are going out. And, these people have studied at probably some of the best universities in the world, and they are probably willing to help, but they just don't know how to go about it. Like, I can give you, for example, for me, I left Zimbabwe when I wanted to do my undergrad in North America, and I ended up doing my graduate studies there, and I decided to stay and work here. And, personally, I feel like I can be of help, especially when you raise the issue of, the CCC not having their own team of, mathematicians and, computer scientists and stuff like that. I know that there is the team Pachedu team that has been doing a lot of good work, but that's more like a standalone entity. They don't belong to Ccc. And I believe that Ccc needs to have their own team of mathematicians and software developers and data scientists, people who can help them tackle some of these problems that are being thrown at them by ZANU-PF and SEC. So my question is, what advice do you have for them to essentially court some of the brightest minds out there? And then my second question is in regards to—
Can we take that one question at a time? Alex, is that question for you or is it for me? And can we take it? Can we take it in bite sizes, like one question at a time? Alex, I don't know if she's addressing that to me or to you.
Yeah,
I think she's addressing that, Alex, to Dr. Magaisa.
Yeah, sure. No problem. But I'm happy if you have a comment to make on that. I'm happy for you to say something. But yeah, I mean, look, I'm also happy for Gloria, to take your second one, and then I can just do, because I think I've got a response to your first one, which is fairly quick, but maybe the other one has got a longer take.
Right. Okay, I'm just going to ask the second question and then I close my mic.
Yes.
The second question is about Infiltration. CCC is a new organization, and, it will be stupid for us not to think that ZANU-PF or, the military or the intelligence are not going to try to infiltrate, because we've seen it happening in the past. I remember reading that book about the coup in November. I think it's called 2 Weeks in November, if I'm not mistaken. And the main actor in that book, essentially talks about working really close to Tsvangirai, like being his bodyguard or something like that. And, you know, it got me thinking, like, how can such a thing be allowed to happen? Don't, you know, the opposition have their own intelligence team? And if they don't have, whether they have it or not, what do you think should be done to safeguard this new party? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm happy that we had you, Gloria. Now, on the issue of advice to coach, you know, people in the diaspora, I mean, you're right. There's a lot of great minds out there, people who have left and they want to help, and there are certain skills which are really necessary, especially as part of the election campaign. I did mention that it's one thing to focus on having, you know, rallies and so forth. That's the easy thing to do, you know, gathering people together and people singing. But there's a considerable amount of work that needs to be done in the background. Now, I'm a lawyer. My affinity for numbers is very low, but you know, I've been working through numbers over the last few weeks, just trying to, you know, with my calculator, trying to add things. But I imagine that a data scientist or someone who has got the skills will do things very quickly and, you know, smarter than I'm doing. Although I'm happy with the exercise because it's getting me to learn things that I would never have learned about our political space. But yeah, it would be great to have that. My view, Gloria, is that I'm happy that the spokesperson of the MDC, sorry, of the CCC, I told you, old habits die hard, of the CCC is here with us, and she's listening. And I would encourage you to contact Fadzai. I would encourage you to, contact me. We can speak, have conversations, because, you know, I do get to refer many people who are offering themselves. You know, we know it's a cliche when you say, you know, ask not what, your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. But the same thing about the party. You know, the question is, what can you do and what can you offer? And I'm putting this through to many of you people who are out there in the diaspora and feel that there are things that you can do. And we do get a lot of them, and we just make references to the relevant people to do that. The issue of infiltration and due diligence is important. Let me just point out, and I'm making this statement strategically because I know we've got a lot of our friends here from the other side, friends who work in the project of listening what's going on, and we know there's something called counterintelligence. And unfortunately, the problem that happens in opposition circles is that there are people who come to you and become very close, and you begin to trust them. Because what they do is that they will tell you that so and so is going to do this, or this and that is going to happen. Now, 4 times out of 5, those things are going to happen. When the 5th thing doesn't happen, you are likely to dismiss it and say, maybe they just made a mistake this time, you know, because you already have 4 things that you believe that they have told you which have come true. Now, once they have got you, they now know that you believe them and you trust them. They will tell you 4 things again, which are true but less harmful. They mean nothing to them. But they will tell you the 5th thing, which will be completely harmful to your prospects and to your interests. But you believe it because you have already believed the other 4 things, you know, in the past. So, friends and colleagues in opposition circles, I like to think that some of them know this and are aware of it. But if they are not, they need to be more aware of this and to be averse to it, to install safeguards, you know, because this is how infiltration takes place. And believe you me, you will find that some of the most vocal people on our Twitter circles, the streets as they call them, or Facebook, you'll be surprised that these very same people some of them will be working. They'll be on duty, but you now believe them because they are occasionally always supporting you, but they come in all shapes and sizes. I've been in this political space, so I understand how this works. Not that I know how to prevent it. No, I sometimes fall for it as well, and I can fall for it, in the future. But it's just important for people to understand that not everybody who shouts, Triple C, Nelson Chamisa, is your friend. I think in biblical terms or Christian terms, I cannot claim any authority in that, but I'm sure they say it's not everybody who says God is a true believer or shall enter the kingdom of heaven or something like that. But it's the same thing in our political space. So people have to be really savvy, be careful, about people around them. It's very difficult to trust everybody because people have got different motives. Now, sorry if that makes you paranoid, but it's just important. I'm just confirming your point about the importance of due diligence and avoiding infiltration. So yeah, thank you very much, Michael. I don't know if you wanted to say anything to what Gloria had said, but I am done. In terms of everything that I wanted to say today.
I think it's all about the brain drain component of that. It's a catch-22, isn't it? Because the best way to get a world-class education is to exercise your rights as a student to apply for student visas. A student, I always tell everyone that the best way to travel to the West is with a student visa. The best way to stay in the West is with a student visa. The catch-22 is that we all know that a certain percentage of the people that choose to get a Western education, a world-class education, a certain percentage will never return. So that is the catch-22. And again, as I said earlier, before I did the call to action, which I am going to repeat, is that if you have questions, specific questions, I am here as a resource. So if you have not done so already, I'd like to encourage and invite you to follow our host and, of course, our co-host. And please invite your friends and family to join us in this conversation by retweeting the room with the little blue button in the lower right-hand corner. And then it will direct you to another page, and you want to go to the upper right-hand corner and then click that button as well. Back to our host and co-host. And again, if you have questions, I'll be happy to address them.
Thank you very much, Michael, for that. I also want to thank Dr. Magaisa. You have been with us since 7. It's been 2.5 hours. Thank you very much for, breaking down these issues for us and making it much clearer and responding to the comments and questions from the listeners who have joined us here today. Thank you very much, Dr. Magaisa.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. I like to think it was a productive conversation. There will be more opportunities in future for us to discuss. I know there are many people who wanted to ask questions and perhaps to say a few things, but there will be other opportunities. Thank you so much, and keep well.
Certainly, we will have more conversations, and I've also noted down some of the Twitter space ideas that you highlighted from the questions that were being asked from the floor, and I will follow up. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That was Dr. Alice Magaisa, who was speaking to us about the